many of you have ever had something taken away from you in your life only to realize how much you appreciated it after it was gone? Most of us, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit this evening about the power of appreciation. And sometimes in life we don't always appreciate things until they're gone. And the time I probably learned the most about appreciation in my own life is when something really important got taken away from me, and that was my professional baseball career. So I grew up in California in the San Francisco Bay Area where I still live now. And as a kid growing up, I played baseball. I really liked it, I was pretty good at it. I actually got drafted right out of high school by the New York Yankees. I didn't end up signing a contract with the Yankees at that time because I got an opportunity to play baseball in college at Stanford University, which is about an hour from where I grew up. So I went to Stanford and I played baseball there. It was fun, got my education, got a chance to pitch in the College World Series, which was kind of cool. Then I got drafted out of Stanford by the Kansas City Royals, another pro baseball team, signed a pro contract. And the way that it works in baseball, as some of you may know, you get drafted by a major league team like the Yankees or the Royals or the Colorado Rockies right here. Any of the teams in the major leagues, you get drafted by them, you sign a contract, you go into what's called the minor leagues. And there's a bunch of levels of the minor leagues. You gotta work your way up, try to get to major leagues. I go into the minors in Kansas City. I was a pitcher, working my way up, trying to get to the major leagues. I was doing pretty well, but unfortunately for me, my third season still in the minors, I went out to pitch one night, I threw one pitch, I tore ligaments in my elbow, I blew my arm out. Just like that. I was 23 at the time. I had started playing baseball when I was 7. My career didn't end like instantaneously. I was playing on the East Coast at the time. They sent me back to California. I had an operation on my arm that summer. I ended up having 3 operations over the next 2 years. Did everything I possibly could to try to come back because I love playing baseball. But unfortunately for me, when all the surgeries were done and I had done everything, the doctors and physical therapists had told me to do, I wasn't able to make it back to where I needed to be to continue to play. So as you can imagine, I was pretty upset, right? I mean, I was devastated. This had been the focus of my life since I was a little kid. But as disappointed as I was when I realized that my baseball career was over, and as much as I had no idea what I was going to do next, I was in that moment of transition, that moment of sort of uncertainty. I started to reflect back on the whole experience. I started to look back at all those years of playing baseball, and I started to ask myself some questions. And one of the questions I kept asking over and over again was, did I have any regrets? If I could do it all over again, would I do anything different? And you know what's interesting? I didn't regret a lot of the stuff that I thought I would. Like the bad games that I had, or times I really blew it, or the stuff I got all stressed out about. None of that stuff mattered to me anymore. The only regret that I had was that I didn't fully appreciate it while this happened. I was this kid from Oakland, California, right, raised by a single mom. We didn't have a lot of money. I was going to make it to the major leagues. I was going to make some money. I was going to, hopefully be important. But at that point in my life, I was actually pretty good. I spent most of my time thinking that I wasn't good enough, comparing myself to everyone around me, and literally like holding my breath, hoping that I didn't mess it up. And when it was all said and done and I hadn't made it, I thought to myself, oops, I think I missed the point. How many of you can relate to this in some way in your own life? Right? Our stories may be different, our backgrounds may be different, but a lot of us, with good intention by the way, have a tendency to focus so much of our attention on where we're headed. We want to be successful, we want to graduate, we want to get that next degree, we want to get a good job, we want to get whatever it is, whatever the goals that we have, the big goals, the important ones. Not that there's anything wrong with those goals, but we focus so much of our attention on where we're headed, sometimes we forget to appreciate where we are right now. And for me, it was a really painful way to learn a really important lesson at a relatively young age. And I didn't know the full significance of the lesson, quite frankly. I just knew I needed to figure out what I was going to do next. So I got a job. This was the late 90s, probably around the time many of you were born. Maybe even, when was you born? Like late 90s, early 2000s? Where are we at? Yeah, a little bit? Okay, late 90s. Anyway, I get a job working in San Francisco for an internet company that's based in New York. But I go get this job, and I figured the business world would be way different than the sports world, and it was. But I noticed a couple things that were similar. The first thing I noticed is, how many of you have ever noticed that it's not always the most talented people that are the most successful? Have you noticed that? Like, it helps to have some talent, but I was like, whoa, okay, the most talented. And then how many of you noticed this one, which I think is even more interesting? How many of you noticed it's not always the most successful people, whatever that means, that are the happiest, that are the most fulfilled? Yeah. And then I realized, I don't think anyone ever taught me how to be happy. I never took that class. Like, I missed the fulfillment one-on-one class. I wasn't on my schedule anywhere. And I was like, well, what's that about? And then I also noticed something else on the team level. How many of you have ever been a part of a group or a team of any kind where the talent in the group or on the team is really good, but the team's not very good? You ever notice that? It's like a bunch of really talented people and they can't get along and nobody likes each other and it's all messy. It's like, I don't want to be part of that team. But it doesn't make sense because there's a bunch of talented people. But then have you ever been a part of a team where it's not like every single person on the team in and of themselves is a rock star, but the team just kind of works, the group really works, and it's fun and right? I had noticed that as an athlete and always been fascinated by it. In sports, we call that chemistry. No one can quite define what that is, but you know when you have it, and you definitely know when you don't have it. And it was really interesting to me, and I erroneously thought it was a sports thing. Then I got into the business world, I got a job, and I realized that's not a sports thing, that's a human thing. In business, they call it culture. It's the same thing. And so I got so curious about this whole notion of how do we take our talents and turn it into success, and more importantly, how do we take whatever success we have and actually be fulfilled by it? And then what does it take for groups and teams to actually come together when it's not just about having the smartest or the most talented people, it's about something else. So that's what I was so interested in. And a little less than 20 years ago, I started a consulting business because I wanted to learn more about that. I was trying to find a job, quite frankly, with someone who could hire me and then teach me those things, but I could not find a job, so I just decided I would start my own business. I didn't know anything about starting my own business, but that's what I did. And I started researching, and I started writing a little bit, and I started asking lots of questions from really smart people. And over these last 18 years, I've had a chance to learn a few things, write a few books, travel around, speak at a lot of wonderful universities and other companies and places. And one of the most important things that I've learned over all these years is that one of the best things that we can do to not only maximize our talent and turn it into success, but to really focus on being fulfilled in our lives wherever we are in our journey, is to focus first and foremost on our mindset, like how we're approaching things, but really utilize the power of appreciation. So we're going to talk about those two things tonight and how they relate to you and to your life as students, and there's a handful of you in here who may not be students, but how it relates to your life. Anyway, I got two primary intentions for this evening. And I will talk a lot, but I'm going to also want to ask for you to talk either to each other or if you have questions, so it won't just be me talking the whole time. But our two intentions for this evening are, number one, that we have some fun. So you interested in having a little fun?
Yeah.
Yes? You sure?
Yep.
Okay. Second intention, you don't have to. Second intention is that the stuff that we talk about tonight, you'll be able to actually take some stuff from this that you can use in your real life on a daily basis in focusing on whatever the things that are most important to you. Cool? All right. So, let's start with this. How many of you have anything in your life right now that's going on that you find difficult or stressful? Anybody? Okay, good. I'm not the only one. Okay. So here's what I would like for you to do. We're going to talk a little bit about this in regards to our mindset. I would like for you to find someone to pair up with. Maybe you came with someone, you can talk to them, that's fine. If you came solo, that's no big deal. Just find someone around. If you don't know them, introduce yourself, say hello. But just pair up with someone and talk a little bit about what are you finding right now, either in school or in life, or those of you who have jobs and work, what are you finding most difficult and stressful right now? Like you're trying to solve this challenge or this issue, whatever it may be. Chat with someone a little bit about that, okay? I'll just give you a minute or two and then we'll talk about it as a group.
That's all they do.
Hi, John. Nice to meet you. No, it's all good. Yeah. So are you Denver student? What's your major? In biology, yes. Fabulous. Yeah, you think so? Yeah. Yeah. Is that the top thing right now? Yeah. So do you think it's the time management work that's going to be hard, or is it like the courses themselves?
others?
Which is probably the same problem that you're facing with.
All right, everybody get a chance to talk a little bit? Maybe some of you met somebody new, maybe you're here with someone you know. Either way, okay, so let's talk a little bit about it. So what are some challenges or stresses that you're dealing with right now? School. Yeah, finals coming up in a few weeks, right? School gets a little stressful, it's the end of the semester, it's the end of the year. Yeah, absolutely. What else? Are there any specific stresses related to school or just kind of school in general? Calculus, yeah. Certain subjects might be more challenging than others. Yes, what else? Other specific stresses, yeah.
Maintaining priorities between work and go to school at the same time.
Yeah, so maintaining priorities. Some of us go to school and work, and it's like I have both I got to deal with. I've got commitments I have to be at work. Obviously, I have to be at school, but it's not as negotiable on some of that stuff. And then I have exams coming up. I got to study, but I got to be at work. And how do I manage my time with all of that, right? What else? Yeah. Planning for after graduation. Yes. How many of you are graduating this year? Got a few. Oh, okay. Congratulations. It's both exciting and terrifying, yes? Yeah. And look, one of the things, I remember someone said this to me. Now, I had a weird experience graduating because, I was playing baseball. And so I got drafted actually as a junior and signed with the Royals and came back and finished senior year and then graduated with my class, but I didn't have to go find a job or figure out what I was going to do next because I was already doing something next, which on the one hand was kind of a blessing, but also delayed the process to then a few years later when I got injured, then all of a sudden I was a few years later and like, ooh, all my friends had gone through that. But I remember a mentor of mine said something to me about this. He said, graduating from college is one of the scariest times in our development. He said it's kind of around the same as like adolescence. And you kind of go through adolescence, and then as you move through adolescence, you just get out of adolescence, and then you graduate from college if you do it in that order. Because it's like the rules are very different. Up to the point, and I don't say this to freak you out, but just to realize that there's a structure to school. That even though it gets a little annoying, and even though probably those of you who are about to graduate, you're sort of like, maybe you're excited to go on and do more education, which is fantastic. Maybe some of you are like, I'm done with school for a while. But there is a structure, there is a plan, there is a this, and then that, and then this, and there's breaks, and there's summer, and there's, right? We know how to do it, and then you graduate, and it's like, the structure is gone, which is both exciting and terrifying, because it's like, well, what do I do next? Well, what's the right thing to do? And there's not like a right thing to do, it's just like, what's right for me?
And how do you know who you are outside of being a student?
How do you know who you are outside of being a student? That is a great question, because the reality for most of us, if we've gone to school all the way through, which most of us have by the time we get to the end of our undergraduate process, whether we graduated quickly or it took us a while, either way, it's like I've only related to myself as a student. And even the jobs that I've had outside have been jobs so that I could pay for school, or jobs so I could actually have some fun on the weekends, or it wasn't usually, not usually do we have some career that's building as we're 14, 15, 17, 20, 25, So then it becomes this, I don't know exactly. And look, as much, and we were talking before, as much as I love school and appreciate education, one of the things that I think is challenging about the way that we're educated is we learn a lot of really important subjects, but one of the classes that is often missing is, how do I figure out who I am when I'm not a student? How do I figure out what I really want to do, what comes next? That's not really built into the education system, and part of what we have to figure out for ourselves is, what's that path for me? Right? And I think one of the best things we can do is just keep asking lots of questions, both to ourselves, but talking to our friends and talking to people who maybe are just like, you can talk to people who are a lot older than you and talk about their journey, but I also find it, at least for me at that time in my life too, it's good to talk to people who are just a couple years older than me. Because I got some really interesting perspective from them. Like, what did you do? A friend of mine actually wrote a great book. It's called Life After College. And what she realized, she graduated from UCLA, and this was a number of years back, but what she realized is that she, like many people, struggled right when she got out of school, because she's like, where's the roadmap, where's the plan, what am I supposed to do? And so she actually wrote a book about that, because she wanted to sort of share what she had learned. Now, she's moved on with her business and written other books and does other things, but that book is still really relevant in the sense that there are a lot of people, both in this community and elsewhere, that have walked the same path, and we can learn from them. Right? But that's definitely a stressful thing for, I imagine, many of you. Even if you're not about to graduate, if you're a junior, even if you're a sophomore, if you're a freshman, as you start to think about, well, what do I do next? Other stresses, anybody have any stressful stuff going on in their families? Yeah?
Worry about, I guess it goes back to this, worry about not being good enough.
We're worried about not being good enough. So meaning like in relation to being in school, in relation to other, yeah. Look, thank you for saying that. And look, one of the biggest things, part of what I think happens for most of us, right? How many of you have ever had the experience of not feeling like you were good enough at something? All of us, right? It's a normal human experience, right? It's one of the most basic, I think, universal experiences that most human beings have. However, we don't tend to talk about it very much, right? All those years playing baseball, right? I was like pretty good as a kid. I was pretty good at this, but like, and as I got better over the years, I got better, I kept moving along. Even though externally I was having more success and getting more attention, it was like every step I would go up, I would simultaneously feel really proud of myself and excited and super insecure. Because it would be like, oh my goodness, am I good enough to be at this? And it's true in life, right? In school, think about it, you move along. Remember just a few years back before you got to college, you thought, oh, you know what, if I get to college, I'll be really happy. You know what, I'll be super smart and confident. And like, I'll be good. And then you showed up and you're like, how come I don't feel smart and confident? Like, what happened, right? Because part of it is that thing inside of all of us, by the way, that it gets triggered, is that thing where we feel like, oh, I'm not good enough. And we look around and we start comparing how we feel on the inside to how other people act on the outside, and they don't match up. Right? So it's like you look at someone else, it's like she looks really confident, he looks really confident, they seem like they know what they're doing, but I don't. You know what I'm talking about, right? And then we think like we're crazy. Oh, I'm just crazy. Like, okay, I'm not saying anything because I don't want people to think I'm crazy, or I don't want people to like judge me, or I don't want people to think I'm, you know what I mean? And it becomes this weird, how do you know what I'm talking about? And this, by the way, is going on inside of everybody, and then we're all faking it like we're cool. I'm good. Don't worry about it, I got it handled. So part of the process of that, from my own experience, and a lot of the research that I've done as well, is if we can get in touch with that part of us that feels like we're not good enough, and acknowledge it, but not let it run the show. Does that make sense? Like, that's there for everybody. Even for people, like, when you see someone and you think, oh, well, that person can't have doubt about that, or can't feel insecure about that, or whatever, right? Like, I travel around the country and I speak publicly. I love doing this. I'm super passionate about it. But people will come up to me and they'll say stuff like, oh my God, it's so amazing. Like, how'd you learn how to speak publicly and not get nervous? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I haven't learned how to speak and not get nervous. Like, I still get nervous. I just speak anyway. Because when I'm standing over there and we're waiting and Victoria's about to introduce me, like, a little voice in my head is going, they're gonna think you're dumb, they're gonna think you're old, they're gonna think this is lame. And I'm like, shut up, I'm trying to do this right. But that's what's going on inside my head. And I just have to learn over time mentally to just say, you know, thank you very much, that little voice. I have to go do something that matters to me. I'm gonna go do it anyway. Because if I listen to him, whoever that crazy person is in my head, I'll never do anything. I just sit in my room, and now with all this great technology we have, I don't have to interact with another human being for the rest of my life. I used to be behind a screen talking to people and making weird comments and doing stuff, right? So part of it, I say this, I know I'm making it in jest, but for us all to sort of get in touch with the fact that, like, people that you see in life who are really successful and people who are really fulfilled, it's not that they don't have that little voice in their head that says those things to them. They just somehow figured out a way, not like they're perfect, they just somehow figured out a way to not let that voice stop them. That's the biggest difference. Is not giving our power away to that thing, but that's a real challenge, right? That's a real thing that shows up and stops us. And here's the deal, as far as I can tell, now look, I'm 45 years old, so I've only lived to this point, so I can't speak to what comes after, but up to this point in my life, what I've seen and experienced myself, and from just about every other human being that I've ever talked to that's been real about it, that still exists. It changes shape and form, and the conversation changes. But like when we're young, we think, oh, maybe I feel insecure because I'm young, and once I get some experience, and then we move along in life, and then at some point, I don't know when it happens, but almost every person I talk to, it's like now and then I walk into places or even in a room like this, and all of a sudden it's like, oh man, I'm old. And it's like, when did that happen? Do you know what I mean? It flips. And it's not even about age, but it's just finding, in any situation, we can find reasons to think that we're not good enough and try to justify that. Or we can figure out, how do I deal with that part of me that feels like I'm not good enough? Because it's not about getting better and thinking that if I get better at something, that will go away. It's actually about going to the source of that. Does that make sense? And so much of what that is, and I appreciate you bringing it up, it's our mindset. It's how we think about ourselves. It's how we think about the world and other people. It's the lens that we look through. And if we look through the lens, even as we're relating to ourselves, if the mirror If I'm trying to find all the places where I'm flawed and not good enough, I can probably find them. So part of what we have to learn how to do is not be Pollyanna or fake or phony or happy all the time in some inauthentic way, but how do I shift my mindset to look at things differently? I'll give you an example of this, because with every challenge that you face, let me ask you this. The things you were just talking about, whether it's school, whether it's balancing priorities, whether it's figuring out what the heck am I going to do next, whether it's the internal voice that says I'm not good enough, whether it's any issue that might be going on in our family. I mean, sometimes it's serious stuff that are stuff that's stressing us out. Could be financial, could be health related, could be related, lots of stuff. And there are real issues, as we all know, going on in the world. However, how many of you notice or ever catch yourself, or other people maybe, complaining about the things that you just talked about? Do you ever do that? Yeah, we do, right? We're humans and we're frustrated. Sometimes something gets stressful, school gets stressful, a class gets stressful, I'm balancing my, and we complain. And we love to complain. As a culture, we love to complain. And we love to complain to each other. And we'll even do this. You ever start complaining to someone and they go, oh, you think that's bad? And then they one up you on it, right? Let me tell you. And we go back and forth. You could like bump into a stranger on the street, not even know them, start complaining with, and they'll start complaining back, and you can have a great conversation, right? It's totally socially acceptable to complain about stuff, right? However, one of the many things that I do in my work, as Victoria mentioned when she introduced me, I have a podcast, so I interview people and have for the last few years on the podcast. I used to have a radio show before that. When I'm working on a book, I'm constantly interviewing people to get stories and information and ideas and research for the book. But even when I'm not working on a project or doing like a formal interview, I'm just a curious, my daughters at home call me nosy, but I'm just curious. Like I like to know about people and their experience in their lives. So I ask people questions a lot. One of the questions that I like to ask people is, what's the key to your success? When I meet people who are successful or fulfilled in certain, what's the key to your fulfillment? What's the key to your success? Like, what do you think's allowed you to be fulfilled, happy, successful in your life? Because I'm both curious, like, hey, maybe you could share something with me that I never thought of that I might be able to do myself that would help me. And given what I do, maybe I could then share that idea with other people and it might be beneficial. After all these years, I've been doing this work for almost 20 years, and asking some version of that question, what's the key to your success or your fulfillment? I've heard a lot of things, because there's not one size fits all to the answer to that question. There are lots of different ways to be happy, fulfilled, successful. But you know what I've never heard anyone say to me when I've asked that question? Complaining. Not one person has said, Mike, it's amazing, I just whined my way right to the top. No, because it doesn't work. Because complaining, look, we all do it, and I'm not trying to stand up here in some morally superior way, you should never complain again, you should know. It's just not healthy, it's not beneficial, it doesn't usually address the actual issue. It doesn't make us feel better. It's kind of like junk food. Like it feels good in the moment, and then it feels bad really soon after. It's like, oh, why did I eat that? That wasn't good, right? But we complain, and again, it's socially acceptable, and then we want to vent a little bit, and it feels good, and other people agree, I know, I can't stand them. But it doesn't actually, and what it does is it then turns our mindset, it shifts us in a really negative direction. So we're constantly looking for what's wrong, where's the problem, or we're blaming our discomfort or our frustration or our insecurity or whatever on someone or something else. It's your fault. It's their fault. Which again, in some cases there are things happening that aren't cool, and I'm not saying that, but what we end up doing is not dealing with what's actually going on inside of me. If I make it, well, I have this really mean professor, or I had this really crazy paper due, or this problem set, or this thing, or my parents are really breathing down my neck. And all those things could absolutely be true, and maybe not necessarily easy to deal with, but the truth of the matter is, I'm having a hard time dealing with this person, or this situation, or this assignment, or this test, or this situation, or whatever. And so we shift our mindset all of a sudden in a different way. There's a professor out at Stanford whose work I've been studying for a number of years named Professor Carol Dweck. And she's created this whole body of work she calls growth mindset. And what growth mindset essentially is, there's kind of two components of it. Growth mindset is this idea that we can actually get better at anything if we put our mind to it, which we all know. If we're willing to work on it, even if it's uncomfortable, even if we're not very good at it, we can get better. But we gotta actually be willing to engage in it. But the other part of growth mindset that I really like is she basically says, and the research shows us, if we take a growth mindset approach, anything that we deal with, from the most horrific tragedy to just the everyday mundane annoyance, if we take a growth mindset, it doesn't mean it'll magically be easy or fun, but what it does mean is we can use that experience, even a difficult or challenging one, as an opportunity to learn and grow. It can make me stronger, it can make me a better person, it can make me... And I learned about this many years ago. It was not introduced to me as growth mindset. I was not familiar with Professor Carol Dweck at Stanford, but a friend of mine named Brian took me out to lunch not that long after I got home after my baseball career ended. I got a job. I was working in San Francisco, as I mentioned, for a tech company. Brian was a few years older than me. I'd known him for a little while, trusted him, good guy. He takes one day, and he's someone that I'd asked a little bit about kind of what do I do next, and he'd given me some advice. But we go out to lunch this one particular day, and he's like, "Hey, Mike, how you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, good." I'm trying to put on a gun, and he's like, "No, really. Like, how are you really doing?" And I was like, "Well, I'm still struggling. Like, I'm disoriented. I had played baseball from the age of 7 until I got hurt at 23 and retired at 25. Like 18 of the first 25 years of my life were doing this one thing that I was pretty good at, and it was my identity. And I was like, I'm struggling. It's just." And he said, "Totally makes sense. I've been thinking about you. I've been a little worried about you." And he said, and I wanted to take you out to lunch, he said, because I want to warn you about something. And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, there's a question that we often ask ourselves when we go through something difficult or challenging in life." He said, "It's a very simple question. It's a very normal question. It's just a dangerous question." He said, "You're probably asking yourself this question right now. I would probably be asking myself this question if I were you, but I want to warn you about it." He said, "Here's the question. Why did this happen to me? Or why is this happening to me?" He said, again, it makes sense. When something happens you didn't want to happen, or something seems unfair, it's like you worked hard and this thing happened and your body broke down and you weren't able to keep doing this thing you really wanted to do and this thing you loved to do and this thing you put a lot of time and energy and effort into, this dream that you had got shattered. And he said, "Look, I don't know exactly what that's like. I didn't go through that same experience." He said, "But the problem with that question, if you keep asking it, is the only place it'll take you is down a really dark hole where there's a lot of reasons or justifications or rationalizations for why you got a raw deal and why it's not fair." He said, "But if you change one word in that question, it'll fundamentally change the way you're facing this challenge and any challenge you face." He said, "Change the word to the word for. And ask yourself, why is this happening for me?" He said, "Doesn't mean you like it. Doesn't mean it's fun and easy. Doesn't mean it's like, hey, great." No, it means like you challenge yourself, even in the middle of this challenge, in the middle of this difficulty, in the middle of maybe some pain and discomfort. Ask yourself, honestly, why is this happening for me? Meaning like, how is this possibly going to make me stronger? How is this going to make me more resilient? How is this going to teach me things that I'm going to need to know and learn? And some of it, he says, is going to be a leap of faith because you don't know. But if you don't ask, you'll never know. And he was challenging me a bit, but because Brian, I knew him, I trusted him, I knew he had my back, I knew he wasn't trying to just be in my face or provocative for the sake of it. I sat there at that lunch and I thought, man, is that even for me? It's not happening for me, right? But I left and I couldn't stop thinking about what he said. Do you ever had a conversation with someone like that? Where it like gets in there and it was like bouncing around in my head. The next few days, the next few weeks, I just started to slowly but surely. And it wasn't an overnight thing, and it was a process over weeks and months, and quite frankly, given how big of a transition I was in my life, if I look back on it, probably years, but I started to ask myself that question at that time. And now all these years later, as I look back on it, I can see, oh my goodness, there were so many things that happened for me as a result of that really difficult, really painful thing that I did not want to happen. That I would argue ultimately led me to be standing here tonight talking to you. And sometimes they're big things and sometimes they're smaller things, but when we can take something difficult or challenging or stressful and shift our mindset and ask ourselves, why is this happening for me? Not a month or a year or 5 years later, but in the moment when it's still going on, that can actually make it more possible for us to be more effective at how we navigate that. And definitely we become more available to learn and grow through the process. Does that make sense? So here's what I'd like for you to do. Turn back to your partner, and just look up, by the way, as you and your partner pair up. If anybody is sitting in a weird way where they're not paired up with someone, just see if you can invite them over. It's okay if there's a group of 3. Talk about either something you were talking about before or something else. Pick something specific, like this thing that's happening right now that I don't like, I wish wasn't happening, is really not a good thing. But see if you can put the lens on it and ask the question, why is this thing, this painful, stressful, difficult, challenging thing, why is it happening for me? And just see what comes up from the conversation, all right? I'll give you a few minutes, make sure nobody gets left out, and then we'll talk about it all together, okay?
Timberley Road. Yeah. Timberley Road. Yes. So I'm a faculty member in the biology department.
I teach microbiology. All right, I'm gonna write this down. Yeah, I mean, no, you got it.
I want to be working on myself right now, and I can be like 25 and job instead of debt.
Yeah. 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 So is that why? Well, first of all, why you're getting your degree, and yeah. So I guess the reason why it's happening for you is so that you can ultimately get that degree, even with the challenges.
All right, take another minute or so with your partner.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. Yeah. I like it too, and I've gotten away from the why is this happening? That's not a question. That's how it comes with age. But I just recognize that it's going to get
Okay, start to wrap up with your partner.
plow through it. But I do believe that I really do make it better. We just don't see it.
Okay. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this. So what did you notice talking with your partner or partners about something stressful or challenging, but then asking the question, why is it happening for me? What did you notice about that? It was strange, right? You don't think of it that way. Like, this thing is not happening for me, this thing is happening to me, I don't like it, I want it to just not be there, right? Yeah, so it's a little strange at first. It's literally like me saying, write with your other hand. It feels weird. It's like, I'm not very good at that, I'm not used to that. We're used to complaining about or avoiding the difficult things. That's just kind of the way most of us react. When something difficult, it's like, I'll either complain about it, avoid it, or maybe like work really hard to try to fix it or change it as fast as possible so that I can move through it. We don't usually just stop and take a step back and go, could I look at this thing differently for a moment? Maybe that might open something up. Yeah, what else did you notice?
When I was talking about why it happened to me, it was kind of assumed I'd fail, or I was like making excuses.
Yeah.
It's too hard, basically.
Yes.
And why it's happening for me, there's like, it's how I'm getting through it and like what I'm going to learn from getting through it. So
Yeah.
it's basically I can't to I can.
Yeah, it just like it doesn't. The circumstance is still the circumstance, right? But what you just said is it's a shift from I can't to I can. All we do really is change the story. But that story is really powerful. The story that we tell ourselves about what's happening is the reality that we experience in everything. There's what's happening, and then there's the story I'm telling, and then I'm perpetuating the story because I'm telling everybody, right? And then it just becomes sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. But all of a sudden, if I tell a different story, it doesn't magically change the circumstance. The circumstance is still the circumstance. But all of a sudden, I have a different mindset. I might be more effective at dealing with it. I might take on less stress about it. Right? So it's kind of how we look at things. When we change the way we look at things, all of a sudden our ability to deal with those things is changed. Other thoughts or questions about this as you were thinking about something specific and then just shifting your mindset or asking that question? Yes?
So as I was talking to my partner here
Yeah.
and listening to his story,
Yeah.
I noticed that his language started to change and it became more goal-oriented.
Yeah.
So it was a discussion of, this is my goal, and so this is an experience I need to have.
Absolutely, right? It becomes a thing where then you change your language. Look, part of it, and I don't mean to, here's the deal. There are things that happen in our lives that are hard, that are painful, that are confusing, that don't make sense, that don't seem fair, that we don't, right? And when we're in the middle of them, we don't yet know how the story ends. The stuff that happened a long time ago that we can look back and go, oh yeah, that was hard, but I got through it, it becomes a story that we can tell that's a little more of like a hero story. I triumphed over that thing, or I learned from that thing, or at the very least, I survived. The harder part is to bring it into the present moment and trust. I'm going to learn something from this. It's a matter of, am I going to choose to proactively learn? Or am I going to resist it the whole way and it's going to sort of beat me to the point that I have to learn the hard way? Does that make sense? And look, sometimes it's, again, if we can shift it, there's a value in being goal-oriented, but what if we can also take a step back and go, what skills, what qualities am I learning through this experience? Right, I think of actually when I was a junior in college, just right before my 21st birthday, I got miserably and almost suicidally depressed. Now, I knew a bit about depression because there's a lot of mental illness in my family. My dad had bipolar disorder, which I did not understand as a kid. And growing up in the 70s, people didn't talk about it and deal with it in the same way. We deal with it a little bit better now, although still we've got a long way to go. But I understood, and especially as I got older and went through high school and into college, I understood, and again, I knew what it was to some degree. I knew that it was really problematic and it could have a big impact on people personally and families, because it had a big impact in my family. My folks split up when I was 3, and a big part of it was my father's mental illness. But when I got into a place in college where I was really stuck, I was at first unwilling to acknowledge that might be what's going on for me. Because literally in my family, my father's side of the family, they called it, for better or worse, the family curse. Right? There was like this mythology around it, and it was like, I don't want the family curse. That's bad. But but thankfully my uncle, who's one of the most important people in my life, who also happens to be a therapist, sat with me on the phone many nights as I called him and talked to him, and he said, Mike, you need some help, you need to get some help, you need to get some help. And thank goodness I listened to him, and I went to the student health center, and I found somebody who helped me, and through that process, it was painful, it was scary, and any of you in here have either dealt with that yourselves or know people who have, it's a real thing. And I think there was a part of me, even though I knew a lot about it, I still didn't totally believe that it was a real thing. I thought people were just making it up. Or my dad should just get happy, or I don't know, but then but what I learned from that experience, why did that happen for me? Well, there were so many things. It gave me this huge sense of empathy and compassion, not only for my father, but for so many people, oh, this is a real thing. And I also realized at the time, because I was a college student like many of you in the room, I was focused on school, and I was also an athlete, so I was focused on sports. Those were the 2 most important things in my life, in addition to my friends. Right? I had a girlfriend at the time who I really liked, and I had some friends that were important to me, and school was important, and baseball was important, as well as my family, And those things, all of those things were actually going pretty well. I was doing pretty well in school. I could always have done a little bit better, but there was no major problem. I was doing pretty well in sports and baseball. It was my junior year at Stanford. I was one of the starters on the team. I had a girlfriend. I had all the things that you were supposed to have to be happy, and I was not happy. And at first I was really angry about it. I was mad at, I don't know who, but I'm trying to play the game the way you're supposed to play the game. How come I'm so miserable? But part of it was, I was blaming I don't know who, or maybe my biology or my family or whatever, instead of dealing with the fact that I was about to turn 21 years old and I needed to actually look at myself in the mirror and go, how are you going to learn how to be happy? How are you going to learn how to deal with yourself? And that wasn't necessarily easy, but it was important. And how are you going to learn how to get help when you really need help? And realize when there are people that know things that you don't know who might be able to support you. So there were so many things in that process, and when I came out the other side of that, I was not only grateful, oh my goodness, I survived that, but I realized at the time, and it planted the seed. I was still playing baseball, and I was still very focused on that, but it planted the seed that I can now look back all these years later and go, that was one of the big inspirations for me to ultimately do the work that I do today. Because the realization I had at that time was okay, if I'm in this much pain, other people must be as well. I can't be the only one. But again, many, many years ago, and even still today, people don't talk about that stuff as much. And so, thankfully, I have to say, I think we've made some progress, and I think people do talk about it more. But look, even if it's not that significant or that severe, it comes back to, why are the things going on in our lives, even the difficulties, even the challenges, why are they happening for us? We get our heart broken, and it feels terrible. But how does that teach us how to be more compassionate, more empathetic, more open-minded, more willing to take a risk the next time? Right? We fail in a class or on a test or on a project or go for something that we really want. We could use that and say, I'm not doing that again because that really hurt. Or we could say, you know what? I just tried really hard and I fell flat on my face and I did not like that. I can do that again, because if that's the worst, I know I can survive that. So sometimes even when painful things happen, it's a weird way of reminding us, you know what? I don't want that to happen again. That didn't feel very good, but I have a little bit of muscle around the fact that I'm a little bit stronger maybe than I even thought I was. Does that make sense? So as you think about this, whether it's really big things going on in your life, and it's the big questions of who am I and what comes next and what do I do, or it's more, you know, I don't mean to minimize it, but it's like, I'm stressed about this final, or I'm worried about this thing, or I'm feeling this pressure. All along the spectrum, if we take a growth mindset, we shift and look, why is this thing happening for me? And if we look hard enough, we can always find stuff. Questions, thoughts, comments about this before we move on to the next piece?
Well done.
All right. Hey, okay. So I want to talk, we've been talking again, the context of all this is appreciation. But one of the things I want to talk a little bit about as we move into this, we talk about mindset. I want to talk about appreciation on a couple levels. One of the things that I noticed, and I've been studying appreciation, the first book I wrote is called Focus on the Good Stuff. I've been studying appreciation for almost 20 years now, and here's this really, really simple, but very important distinction that we misunderstand. Because we use the words appreciation and recognition like they're the same thing, and they're not. They're different. They're both important, but they're different. Recognition is positive feedback based on results, based on performance. So recognition in an educational environment would be your grades are recognition. Sometimes they're the recognition you want, sometimes they're not, but you get some recognition. Here's how you did on that test, on that paper, on that project, in this class for this semester. There you go. Getting into college, or getting in if you go on to advanced degree and get to graduate school, that's a recognition. We read your application, we've decided if you happen to get some kind of award, you do something and they say that was fantastic, that's all recognition. But even to day-to-day, it's recognition is positive feedback based on results, based on performance. So even just a reactionary thank you for something is recognition, or good job, or whatever. It can anyway. Appreciation, on the other hand, is about people and their value as human beings. Recognition is about what we do, appreciation is about who we are. Now, why is this important? Well, it's important for a lot of reasons. In our relationships, in how we relate to school and work. I talk about this in the business world all the time. Because there's not always something specific to recognize. We don't always get the grades we want exactly, right? We don't always get all the recognition that we would like, do we? It doesn't always work out perfectly. We don't always get a perfect score. So what do we do when it's not exactly what we want it to be? Or what do we do when someone around us maybe doesn't do everything exactly the way we want them to? Does that mean we can't appreciate them or ourselves? Not at all. We have to separate the two out. The best way I know to describe the difference between these two things, I will give you an example from my baseball career. Now, some of you, I realize, may not like baseball or know much about baseball, but let's see, how many of you know what happens to the pitcher, which is the position that I played in the baseball game when the pitcher does not do well? Do you know what happens? Yes, they literally stop the game. And the manager, the guy in charge, walks out to the middle of the field and physically removes the ball from you and makes you leave. Can you imagine, just imagine for a moment, let's say you in here, a student, some of you, imagine you're taking an exam, it's like a really important exam, and you're taking the exam in the middle of it, you make a mistake, and somehow someone sees, and they go, stop right there, and you have to stop in the middle of it, and walk out, and some other person sits down in your chair and starts taking your test for you. And imagine, by the way, thousands of people are watching this happen. And they all know you got removed because you were messing up in the middle. You'd probably be pretty embarrassed, right? That's what it's like to get taken out of a baseball game as a pitcher. But the worst part of the whole experience, I would walk off the mound. I would walk into what's called the dugout, right, where all my teammates were. And I would sit down, and nobody would talk to me. Seriously, even if you don't like baseball. Season just started a few weeks ago. Rockies are probably on TV almost every night here in Denver, whether they're playing at home or on the road. Turn on a Colorado Rockies game. Watch the team. Even if you don't like baseball, television's the best, by the way, because the camera will often follow that guy in. You can see what he's doing. Watch when it's gotten a little better in the last 25 years or so since I stopped playing baseball, but for the most part, there is still an unwritten rule in baseball. Pitcher does bad, leave him alone, he's upset. And yes, I was upset. I just got pulled out of the game, especially if it was really bad. It's like early in the game, it's like 7-0, we're already losing. I'd be really upset, I'd be mad, I'd be disappointed, embarrassed, frustrated. But what do you think I could use when I was sitting on the bench?
Appreciation.
Yeah, so appreciation, right? Not recognition. What are they going to do? Say, hey, Robbins, great job, man, 7 runs. No, appreciation is not phony recognition. It's not pretending like, oh, it's not so bad, right? Look, sometimes you get a D on something, like that's a D. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Right? Sometimes we fail. Sometimes things don't go the way we want them to. Sometimes people do stuff we don't like and like, hey, that's not cool. So look, recognition is about performance. Our performance, other people's performance, it's about outcomes, about what people do. And if we have a certain standard by which we hold ourselves to, or other people, then it's like, here's the standard. I'm going to hold myself to that standard. However, we have to be not only realistic about the standard, but it has to be healthy. A standard of perfection is unhealthy. You know why? Because we always fail. I have a friend who's a psychologist, and he says a couple great things that I love. One of the things he says, Mike, I've never met a happy perfectionist in my life. Because if we're a perfectionist, then it's never good enough, ever. Doesn't matter how great it is, it's not good enough. So a healthy high standard for ourselves and others can be great as long as it's healthy and we're clear about it, knowing full well that even when we succeed a lot, we're going to fail sometimes too. How do we deal with ourselves and other people? Appreciation, on the other hand, is about valuing people. It's about caring about people. It's about knowing who people are, what matters to them, ourselves included. It's taking a bit of a growth mindset when I fail, not saying, oh, I don't care, no big deal. No, I might really care, but can I value myself for the effort it took to at least try? Can I value other people in that same way? Recognition is important when it's earned, when it's deserved. Appreciation is important all the time. Does that make sense? And we gotta know things about ourselves and other people. Because appreciation can be one of the best things that we can access to connect ourselves to others and to ourselves. I heard Oprah Winfrey speak a few years ago, and she said this really simple but profound thing in this regard. She said, I've interviewed thousands and thousands and thousands of people in my career. I've interviewed everybody. She said, I've interviewed presidents, I've interviewed prime ministers, I've interviewed celebrities, I've interviewed children, I've interviewed criminals, I've interviewed, people who've gone through tragedies, people who've done heroic, you name the type of person, she said, I've interviewed them. She said, after all these years and all these interviews, you know that just about every single person that I've ever interviewed asks me some version of the same question when the interview's over. The camera shuts off, they lean over and they say, how'd I do? Or was that okay? Some version of that question. How'd I do? Was that okay? And she said, early in my career, I used to be really confused by this question. Because I'd be sitting across from someone who's very successful and accomplished, and I'd be wondering to myself, are they really that insecure? Like, do they really need my validation? What is that? Why are they asking me how they did? And she goes, then I realized something. They're not actually asking me how they did. You know what they're really asking me, she said? Did you see me? Did you hear me? Did what I say matter to you? She said, and I agree with her, everybody's asking those questions. All the time. Your parents, your professors, your friends, your siblings, everybody. Even the people you think, no, they're not. Yes. Not because we're necessarily overly insecure, although we often are much more than we let on, but because human beings want to be seen and want to be heard and want to know that they're valued just for being them, not for getting an A. Not that there's anything wrong getting an A. That feels great. I love getting A's more than not getting A's, absolutely. But if our value is in getting an A, then it becomes like if who we are is based on what we do, then when we're not, who are we? And that's a challenge for all of us to face. I still in my own life have to grapple with that all the time. I love what I do, but I have to then remember, I'm me, and then I do this work that I love. But it's like if I put my value in, did they like my book? Did they like my speech? Then I'm like, you all have the power over deciding if I feel good about myself or not. And I'm human, right? So if you came up to me and said, I think that's stupid and you're ridiculous, that's going to have an impact on me, versus if you say, that was really great. However, we have to find somewhere within ourselves to know, like, I'm okay no matter what the outcome is. That all goes back to appreciation of ourselves, which I'll talk about in a minute, but also can we express that appreciation for the people around us? And look, let's be honest. We don't get as much appreciation as we'd like, do we? Do you know something I've never heard a human being say to me in my entire life? You know what, Mike? I'm just too appreciated. It's just too much. I wish my friends and the people around me and my teachers and my parents and everyone would just stop appreciating me. It's really getting on my nerves. No, you know why nobody says that? Because nobody actually feels that way. But there's a couple things we can do. How many of you, honestly, would think it'd be cool if you got a little more appreciation? That'd be cool, right? Okay. I'll give you a couple of things you can do. You have to do this genuinely and authentically, but there's a couple things that you can do. First thing you can actually do is ask for it. My wife taught me this many years ago. So Michelle and I have been together for 18 years. And when Michelle and I we've been dating for, I don't know, a couple months. We were out to dinner one night at a restaurant. And we're talking, and Michelle raises her hand, sitting across from me at the table. And I'm like, yes. Like, I don't know why she's raising her hand. And she said, I would like to be acknowledged. And I said, okay. For what? I was like, what's going on? She goes, well, I got my hair done today. I think it looks nice, and I would like that to be acknowledged. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. You know what? It did look nice. I didn't really know, but it looks great. And I felt a little funny, like, oh, I missed something and whatever. I didn't say anything. And then a few weeks later, we're at her apartment. She made dinner for me, and we're sitting down having dinner, and she raises her hand again. And I'm like, yes. And she said, well, I would like to be acknowledged. And I said, okay, for what? And she said, well, I tried this new recipe. I was nervous to do it. I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out. I think it turned out pretty good. And I said, oh, wow, it's great. I love it. I was going to say something. I didn't know, And then after, now I'm feeling a little funny. And I said, what's going on? Did I do, am I in trouble? What happened? She goes, no. Like, she goes, Mike, here's the deal. I'm not upset, nothing. She goes, I've noticed, she's like, I've dated some guys before you, and I noticed that I spent and wasted a lot of time and energy being annoyed that they wouldn't notice certain things that I wanted them to notice. She said, so with you, I've decided I'm going to train you. And I was like, what? And she goes, I've just decided if you're not noticing things or not appreciating certain things, I'm just going to let you know those things are important to me and I would like some appreciation or some acknowledgement for that. And I was like, okay, cool. It's actually been incredibly helpful over the last 18 years. Because in the early days especially, I got trained a lot. But even still now, there's times Michelle will be standing in the kitchen and me and our girls who are 13 and 10, and everything's going on, and she'll just raise her hand, and we all know, we gotta stop. Okay, Mama wants something. She's like, I'd like to be acknowledged. And she will let us know so that she doesn't get resentful and bitter about it, but just put it out there that she would like some appreciation for. And in some cases, she's actually asking for recognition. But in other cases, it's more just, I want to be seen, I want to be heard, I want to be valued. And so what I also know to do with my wife is to ask her, and her with me as well, right? And there are certain things for the people that we care about most, it's important that we pay attention. But what Michelle and I both say to each other, we try not to be condescending about it, but we say almost like you would say to a little child, like, use your words. Because as well as I know my wife, and I probably know her better than anyone on the planet, I don't know what's going on inside her head, or inside her heart at every moment. She has to tell me, and I have to do the same with her. So part of it, if we want more appreciation from people, we can let them know what matters to us, how we like to be appreciated. Again, if it's a relationship, it's a friend, it's a family member, it's a significant other. Even as you move into your professional lives, by the way, I talk to managers and leaders inside of organizations. And then wouldn't it be super helpful if everyone who worked for you came and told you, here's how to motivate me, here's what matters to me, here's what really gets me going? And by the way, on the flip side, here's what really stresses me out and irritates me, and every manager I talk to is like, yeah, and I'm like, well, you could ask them, or you could tell them the same thing, or have that conversation. Yeah, it takes a little courage, but it's actually not that hard. Does that make sense? Yeah, question or comment about that?
So, how do you deal with when you're working in an organization where there's micromanagement, politics, favoritism, and where even when you really try your level best to cope up with the work culture, but you know that you get this feeling every morning like, shit, I have to go.
Yes.
How do you deal with a micromanaging environment like that? How do you have the drive to keep yourself going,
Yeah.
I mean, you sometimes end up working in a culture where you first had like a great working experience with some other organization, and you shift to this organization which is totally like, oh my God, how do I just, I have to pull through this phase.
Yeah, well listen, a couple things I would say. First of all, this is a big and important question, and working with and inside of a lot of different companies, big and small, we deal with this a lot. A couple things I would say that, first of all, you might find yourself either now, many of you are in school, some of you are out in the working world, or even if you have a job in addition to going to school and you think, oh, I don't like this culture, this isn't super positive or conducive. And even if you go and graduate and you find your absolute dream job in the most amazing environment, the most amazing culture and organization, there are going to be pockets, every company, even companies that have a great culture like at a macro level, What the research shows us too is that most of it comes down to the manager that you have, the person you report to, and the team that you work with directly. So you could work at a place like Google, where I do a lot of work, that on a macro level has a really strong culture, people really like working there, the scores are great, and again, you could be on a small team there and you don't really like your manager, and maybe it feels like they're micromanaging you, and the people around you are super competitive, and you're like, right? So there's this notion, people don't quit their job, they quit their boss. Right? For those of you in school, again, there's a culture in every class. The professor sets the tone to some degree, what's the subject, and things happen, right? So we notice this. So the two things I would say to that. If you find yourself in a difficult or challenging culture, one thing you could do, if you were willing and you had the courage, you could speak up about it, but in a productive way. Expressing appreciation for someone, by the way, the same dynamic is true when we express not criticism as much, but feedback in a more negative way. The best way to do both of those things is let another human know what they're doing and the impact it's having on you. So in a positive sense, if someone does something that you really like, if I say, wow, you're really good at that, or that's amazing, or you're super talented, or whatever, or you're really nice, or those are all nice things, those are all positive things, but they're all judgments. I could just as easily say the opposite of those things and they would all be criticism. It's just my opinion. But if I let you know, hey, you know what, when you did that thing for me, it was super helpful, and I could not believe how generous and kind that was. It like made my life, wow, thank you so much, right? You see how that's different than just saying you're really nice or you're really kind? If I let you know what you did and the impact it had on me, now I'm giving you a specific example and letting you know how it impacted me so you can walk away, whether you think of yourself as a kind person or not, like, wow, I did that kind thing for Mike and he really appreciated it. That's super valuable. On the flip side, let's say you did something that I thought was rude. I can say, you're rude. Now you're going to get defensive. No, I'm not, and we might get into an argument. Or I can say, if you're why are you micromanaging me? You say, I'm not micromanaging you. You just need to know more things than I do. Right now we get into an argument about it versus, hey, you know, when you came over to my desk or when we had that conversation yesterday and you said this and then I walked away, I felt like, I don't even know, I just felt kind of yucky inside and I didn't know, and then I was like doubting myself, and I went home last night and I just sort of felt like, I don't know how to work here, or I don't know if you trust me, you know what I mean? If I start to really share, here's my real experience, not a judgment, but my real experience is I wake up in the morning and go, oh no, I have to go to work. If you had the courage to say that to someone, and here's why I say that, not you're a terrible boss or this is a terrible toxic environment, those are all judgments where people will get defensive. But if we let people know our real experience, right? When we just had that conversation, when we interact, it's like, I don't feel like I know how to get a word in edgewise. I'm not saying you talk too much, I'm just saying I don't know how to talk when you're talking to me, because it feels like there's no room for me. Believe me, I've gotten that feedback before, right? So do you see the difference?
Even when you put it in a very diplomatic way,
right?
Where you have to, even convey what you're trying to convey.
Yes.
And not let the other person know how you're, feeling terrible, but this has been on your mind for a long time, and yet it still doesn't work out. That's when it becomes a toxic role.
It's challenging. Well, and one of the things, here's what we got to look at.
So when is how you keep going? Like, how do you keep going?
Well, here's what you got to look at, and this is for all of us, right? What usually is driving that is a certain amount of self-righteousness. Now, what do I mean by self-righteousness? How many of you, like me, have a lot of opinions? And how many of you, like me, think your opinions are right? Yeah, that's the problem. There's nothing wrong with your opinion. I'm not, like, your experience of work is totally true and real for you. So it's not, but what we have to do is challenge our self-righteous opinions. Because sometimes we give feedback and we think it's helpful and we're coming from a good place and we say it very diplomatically and nothing changes. But part of it is we're being self-righteous. The underlying message when we're being self-righteous is, I'm right, you're wrong. I'm good, you're bad. I'm smart, you're not. I mean, we're not saying that, and we may not even really believe that. I'll give you an example, again, another example with my wife, because I think we have to start to see our own blind spots. We were in the car a few months ago. We were backing out of the driveway, the whole family. Me, Michelle, Samantha, Rosie. Samantha's 13, Rosie's 10. We're backing out of the garage. We're in the car that Michelle normally drives. So it's not the car I'm used to being in, so I have to adjust the seat and the mirrors. And we have a house where there's two cars in the garage, but it's kind of tight. So when you back the car out, you have to make sure not to hit the other car, or not to get the mirror, you know what I'm talking about? So I'm backing the car, and I notice the car seems to be parked in kind of a weird angle, and I'm like, Jesus, now I'm having a little bit of a hard time. And as I'm in the middle of this, I stop, and I turn to Michelle, and in that moment, I decide to let her know what I think would make it easier. Hey, if you park the car like this, it makes it way easier if you just back it out. So and I'm explaining this to her, right? And as I'm in the middle of explaining this to her, Rosie, our 10-year-old from the back seat says, hey, Daddy, Stop mansplaining to mommy. To which I'm first impressed that she knows what that is. I'm like, wow, how'd you learn about that, right? But then I'm like, hold on, I was not mansplaining to mommy. And then I look at Michelle, and I look at Samantha, and I look at Rosie, and all three of them are like, yes, you were. And I realized I actually was, because in that moment I was uncomfortable with the situation. It wasn't working out for me, so instead of dealing with that, I decided that was the moment for me to coach my wife on the appropriate way to park the car in the garage, like somehow I'm the expert. The truth was, I wasn't doing a very good job managing that. You see what I mean? And we do this thinking we're being helpful. How many of you know what I'm talking about? How many of you can relate to that on either side of it? Yeah, and it's not that there's no value to the feedback. The question we have to ask ourselves is, where am I coming from with my feedback? If I'm coming from a place of superiority, I'm right, you're wrong, they're not going to listen. And they shouldn't. They're going to get defensive. That's the natural response to self-righteousness, is defensiveness. If we're coming from a place of conviction and authenticity, I'm concerned about this, I believe this to be true, I want to share this with you from my heart, I mean it, people are more likely to listen, not a guarantee. And here's the other thing I would say to you on that example, and not everybody can relate to this specific example, but we can all relate to being around people or in situations that we think are toxic or negative or we'd like to be different. Take a growth mindset to it and ask yourself, why is this happening for me? What am I learning right now about this situation? This will not be the last environment that you work in, but it may not be the last toxic or difficult environment. So then the question becomes, how do I need to shift myself to either give effective feedback to see some change, not take things so personally so it bugs me, or learn how to thrive even in the environment when it's not the most conducive for me to thrive? Does that make sense? All of that takes it back into, I take ownership for my experience. I don't blame it on the people around me. Right? Because how many of you have people in your life that you interact with, either at school or out in your life or at work if you have jobs, that get on your nerves? Anybody? Yes, we all do, right? I was on the phone with a mentor of mine a number of years ago, and I was talking to her about some people who were getting on my nerves. This person's bugging me, and that person's bugging me, and this other person's bugging me. And she listened to me. She's really great, very wise. She's a great listener. And after me complaining for about 5 minutes or so about all these people who are getting on my nerves, she said, Mike, I understand you're frustrated. It totally makes sense. She said, but I have a really important question to ask you. And I said, what's that? She said, who's always at the scene of the crime? I said, what? She said, who's the common denominator in all those relationships you were just complaining about? I was like, that would be me. She said, no, that's right. You think if this person changed, that other person changed, and this person had a different attitude, then everything would be great. She goes, it doesn't work that way. In fact, it works the other way around. She said to me, nothing changes until you do. I was in the midst of working on what turned out to be my third book at the time, and I actually decided to use that as the title, because it wasn't like I'd never heard that phrase before, and I definitely heard that concept. But something about her saying that to me right in that moment had me realize, oh my goodness, what would it be like if I didn't waste my time and energy trying to change everyone around me and just focus on where I can really have some influence, which if I change myself, I will now have more influence on the people around me in a positive way. I can have more influence on the world in whatever way I want to. But if I'm running around trying to fix everyone and everything that I think is wrong, all I'm doing is spewing out negativity, judgment, criticism, self-righteousness. Does that make sense? So this is a way we can actually start to receive more appreciation and give more. Remember the thing I said you could ask for it? Here's the second thing you can do. And this one all of us could get better at in practice, starting right this moment, is get better at receiving appreciation from other humans. How many of you notice that when someone gives you a compliment or expresses some appreciation for you, you get a little funny about it? You ever notice that? Yeah. Okay, here's the deal. You know what you're supposed to say when someone compliments you or expresses some appreciation for you? You know what you're supposed to say? Thank you. Then, this is the most important part, then shut your mouth. All you have to do is say thanks. They are giving you a gift. Your job is to receive the gift. Most of us, if you listen to what comes after the thanks, if we even do say thanks, it's almost always weird and insincere. We do one of two things when we get a compliment. We either give a compliment right back, you too, you're great too, and sometimes we mean it, but sometimes it's like not appropriate. It would be like if I came over to your dorm or your house or your apartment or wherever you live on your birthday with a gift, and I said, hey, happy birthday. And you went, thanks, Mike, and then you said, hold on, you ran into the other room and came back with a gift for me. That would be weird. I'd be like, thanks, man, it's on my birthday, but I'll take it. Okay, it'd be weird, right? Even worse, we argue with people. You ever do that? Someone gives you a compliment, you go, oh, no, God. What are you expecting them to say in response? I go, oh, you're right, you're an idiot. I was just kidding. So weird. All we want is appreciation, then we get it, and we're like, stop it. So but that's like me coming over to wherever you live and to your birthday party and handing you a gift and you going, what is the matter with you? I do not deserve this present. And you throw it on the floor. A couple things would happen. You ruin the gift, right? You defend me, and guess what? I'm not gonna give you any more gifts. Because you just disrespected it, you just ruined it, you didn't take, I had this gift for you, I wanted to give to you. One of the things we gotta realize, when someone gives us this precious gift of appreciation, I mean, it's gotta be genuine. Not when they're just trying to, say something nice just because, or they're trying to manipulate us. But most of the time, when people come and express appreciation for us, they mean it. We just don't have a very good place to receive it. And there's some weird social norm that we're supposed to be like, oh, shut Smith and me. It's not arrogant to receive appreciation from another person. They're giving you a gift. If you receive it, it's not only a gift for you, it's a gift for them. It's a virtuous cycle. You get the appreciation, they get to give it. If you really take it in, it can help you hopefully appreciate yourself a little bit more and feel cared about and valued by other people. It actually feels good when we express appreciation for it. They've now proven scientifically, if I express appreciation for you and you receive it, it'll raise the serotonin level in my brain and yours. So physiologically it makes us happier, less stressed out. If we do it in a group, by the way, it'll not only increase our serotonin level, it'll increase the oxytocin in our system, which actually physiologically will bind us to one another. It's a super simple thing that we can do. Yeah, it's gotta be genuine. It's gotta be real, but if we do that for others, and we accept it when it comes our way. Now, it's tricky sometimes when someone expresses some appreciation for us and we don't agree with them. Remember, that little voice in your head, that little critic, usually criticizes us. Usually it thinks we're not good enough, so it can't even hear the appreciation. But I've trained myself over the years that if someone says something to me that I don't agree with, I no longer argue with them or correct them or somehow. I'm like, thanks. Because my opinion about their appreciation is actually not that interesting to them. Just like on the flip side, when I give someone some appreciation, I don't really want to hear their commentary about it. I just want them to receive it. And when they do start getting weird, or I'll sometimes, without judging them or shaming them, I'll say, hold on, time out, stop. I really meant what I said. All you have to do is say thanks. Because I want them to get it. You ever have a gift for someone for the holidays or their birthday, and you're just so excited, you can't wait to give it to them, you can't wait. If you give it to them, and then they get all, oh, why'd you give me a gift? You should have done that, I feel bad I didn't get you. Now they just ruined it, didn't they? They're like, I got you this gift. I want you to have it. I want you to appreciate it. I want you to know that I care about you and value you. That's why I'm giving it to you. Can you please just take it and be grateful? That's what we want. Does that make sense? And one of the biggest things that we can do, so we talked about mindset, we talked about appreciating others, but what about appreciating ourselves? Another thing Michelle taught me many years ago that I very much appreciated. Michelle and I met right around the same time I started my business, so it coincided, and she was a big reason that I did it. I was super scared and nervous. Like I said, I was looking for a job. I couldn't really find a job. I was out of work. I got laid off when the dot-com bubble burst, and everyone in the tech world, especially people in their 20s like me, were out of work, living where I live. And I wanted to get into this kind of work. I was looking for a place that maybe could hire me and mentor me, and I could apprentice and I couldn't find a job there. I couldn't find a job anywhere. I met Michelle, and I really liked her, and then was nervous, like, oh my gosh, and she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm unemployed, right? I was nervous, like, that's not gonna be very exciting to this woman, maybe she won't wanna go out with me. But she did. And very early on, as I started to tell her a little bit about what I was passionate about, what I was looking for, she said to me, oh, you're starting your own business. And I was like, I am? How do you do that? And Michelle had started her own business. A couple years earlier, she had a staffing company, recruiting. And she's like, look, it's not super easy, but it's not as hard as you think. And she was super encouraging of me and made me believe I could actually do it, which I needed. Among many other things, I needed with some encouragement. But a few months into me starting my business, it was up and down, and I would get scared, and I would get nervous, and there were days I'd think, this is a bad idea, I don't know what I'm doing. And I called Michelle up on the phone one day, and I was super frustrated. And I was like, this didn't work out, and this isn't happening. I was just like mad. And she listened to me on the phone for a few minutes. And after listening to me, she said, very quietly but very clearly, she said to me something that I never forgot. She said, stop talking about my boyfriend like that. And I was like, what? She said, you just said some really mean things about yourself. And you're entitled to do that. I get it, you're frustrated. She goes, but if someone else said those things about you, I would be mad. I would be offended. I would defend you and not want to talk to them. And she said, just because you're you doesn't give you the right to talk about yourself like that. And my first thought as I was on the phone with her was like, I really like this woman. But I really thought about what she said, and I was like, wow, I never thought about it that way. When I'm mean to myself, when I'm critical of myself, it's not only detrimental to me, which it is, it's disrespectful to all the people who love and care about me in my life. Now, we're human, and we're going to have that voice, and we're going to have those fears and doubts, and we're going to have that I'm not good enough thing. It's part of being human. But one of the things, and we think about this for the people, our friends, our family, if we have a significant other, the people that we love and care about the most. Think about how stressful and painful it is when we see someone that we really care about and love being really mean to themselves. Isn't that hard? Don't you want to just shake them and be like, what are you talking about? You're amazing. Why are you saying that? Why are you doing it? I don't understand. Because we have a very different relationship to ourselves inside of ourselves than we often do outside of ourselves about other people. But if we can shift the conversation that we have, by the way, I think the most important conversation you and I have every day, all day, is the conversation we have with ourselves about ourselves, and most often, that conversation is not very positive. But if we could shift that conversation to be a little more positive, to have a little more compassion, a little more empathy, a little more appreciation, a little more gratitude, it not only shifts the way we relate to ourselves, which is huge, it then shifts the way we relate to other people and to the world. Because we don't actually see other people as they are, we see them as we are. You ever notice when you get really stressed out, you're not as nice to the people that you care about? Yeah, they definitely notice, by the way, right? So one of the things that we can do to practice being more appreciative of ourselves is actually a very simple thing, but a profound thing, which is to focus on what we're grateful for. In general, and then if we can even bring it closer, more specifically to ourselves. What am I grateful for in my life, with the people around me, and even what am I grateful for with myself? It doesn't mean I'm perfect. It doesn't mean I'm better than anybody. It means I choose to be grateful and appreciative for the life that I have, for the skills that I have, even maybe for some of the challenges that I have, for my willingness to get up and show up every day, even when I'm not always feeling like it, or I don't always feel like I can make sure it's going to work out perfectly. So, last conversation with your partner. Pair back up and talk a little bit about, right now, right here, tonight, what's the date today? The 23rd of April, 2019. I'm assuming nobody's life in here, including mine, is anywhere close to perfect, but I'm also assuming there's lots of good stuff going on in each and every one of our lives, just by the mere fact that we're sitting in this room, we're healthy enough to be here, we're either in school or have jobs and have people that love us. With your partner, and if there's 3 of you, you'll have to talk a little bit quicker. If there's 2 of you, but talk a little bit about what are some things you're grateful for right now. Okay?
Do you want me to go? I'm grateful that I actually have this job. And that I'm at this institution. I'm grateful for my 13-year-old son who is challenging me differently right now. And I'm grateful that I have a support system in my home. Yeah. Yeah, that's enough. Yeah.
Okay, start to wrap up with your partner.
Sometimes that's what you have to hang on to, is even the really basic things.
All right. Did everyone get a chance to ideally talk about or at least think about some things you're grateful for right now? Anybody have any examples they want to share? What are you grateful for right in this moment? He's got a good one? Oh, you're grateful for him? Oh, that's nice. It's a good thing to let him know. Yeah. I'm I'm sorry? Oh, well, that's good.
That's my answer.
Yes. That's a good thing to express, right? But one of the things, yes.
Oh, what?
Oh, that's not you raising your hand. Did you want to share something you were grateful for?
Sure. I had a hip reconstruction surgery 9 months ago, and today I did 2 a day at the gym weightlifting, and did 2 yoga classes today. So my hip's doing great. And
Nice.
Pretty stoked.
That's cool. That's very cool. You know what's great? I thank you for sharing that, both of you, and I love asking this question. It's a super simple question, but like at least once a week on social, on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, I will put that question out there. What are you grateful for in this moment? Because gratitude is a practice. And I do it because I want to remind people and encourage people to be grateful, but I also do it in a very self-serving way. Because I know when I ask another human being what they're grateful for, if they're courageous enough to answer, and they tell me, it not only is inspiring to hear, it gives me permission to do the same thing. And then I stop and focus on what I'm grateful for. Because if I don't do that, my mind, like most people's minds, will go down all kinds of dark, negative paths about myself and the world and other things, right? We have to train ourselves to focus in that direction. As human beings, our nervous system is designed to have a negativity bias for survival. It's great for survival, it's not good for living a fulfilled life. It's great to make sure we don't get hit by cars or fall downstairs, but not so great to actually focus on all the amazing things around us. Right? So, we're just about to wrap up. I want to do this. I want to close with a couple of announcements and then one last story, and I will stick around if any of you want to chat with me or have questions for me. And a couple things I want to say as we wrap up. If you do want to connect with me on social, feel free. I mean, I try to put stuff out. I write blog posts. I have a podcast every week, but try to put as much stuff out as I can around some of these topics. A lot of the work that I do in the business world focuses on bringing your whole self to work. I'm writing a book right now called We're All in This Together. It's all about teamwork and how do you create a positive culture, the opposite of what you're talking about, right? How do you do that? So this kind of stuff on my website. There's also my TED Talks and other things that you can check out or share with other people if you're interested. I also want to specifically thank Victoria. So Victoria heard an interview that I did on NPR's TED Radio Hour in January, and she contacted me. And she said, I really want you to come speak at CU Denver. And then when we started to try to work out the logistics and all the stuff that was involved, it was like a pretty big process that she had to go to and through, and all the different organizations on campus she had to get money from, and it was a lot. And she was amazing and made it happen, and I just want to thank you very much because it's an honor to be here and I appreciate all the work you did to make that happen. So thank you, Victoria. And the last story I want to share, just to kind of bring this all full circle to where I started and a lot of what we talked about tonight, right? We talked about mindset, shifting our mindset. We talked about appreciation of others and receiving appreciation from people, and then we talked about appreciating ourselves and being grateful. So much of it, again, has to do with how we look at things. So I opened and started this evening sharing the story of me hurting my arm and all that I learned from that experience. But again, a lot of the lessons I think that we learn in life, we get them in stages and in waves, and there's different layers to them, so to speak. Because a number of years ago, I had an experience with my older daughter that really kind of underscored this whole thing for me. I was in the car driving with Samantha, my now 13-year-old, and she was 4 at the time. It was just the two of us in the car, and we were actually going to a baseball game. We were driving to Berkeley to go see Stanford, where I had gone to school, play Cal in a baseball game in Berkeley. We're driving the game, and Samantha's all excited, spend a little one-on-one time with Daddy. Her sister Rosie was about 1.5 years. She was at home with Michelle. And so Samantha's in a little booster seat in the back of the car, and she says to me, hey Daddy, are you going to play in the game? Because she knew that I had played baseball and I'd gone to Stanford. I didn't know, honey, Daddy's not going to play. Well, why not? When they're 4, they ask a lot of why not questions, right? I said, well, honey, Daddy doesn't play baseball anymore. Well, why not? And at this point, I'm thinking, well, she must know, or haven't I talked to her? I mean, but I either she didn't know or she didn't remember. So in that moment, I realized, I need to explain to her. So I started to explain to her what happened. I got hurt, and at first she's a little scared, and then she's a little confused. It takes me quite a while to sort of explain it, and finally she gets it. She goes, I get it, Daddy. You mean you can't play baseball anymore? I said, that's right. I can't play baseball anymore. And then she asked me a pretty simple question, but one I wasn't quite prepared for. She said, Daddy, are you sad about that? And I was like, whoa, like, I wasn't expecting my 4-year-old to ask me about my emotional well-being, but I appreciated the thoughtfulness of it, and I thought to myself, I want to actually take a moment and breathe and actually answer the question honestly and thoughtfully. And so I did, and I said, hey, listen, I was sad when it happened. I was really sad. It was a big deal. I said, but it was a long time ago, and I'm not sad about it anymore. I said, in fact, you know what, honey? I'm grateful. And she said, grateful? Grateful? Because even at 4 years old, she was grateful, man. We talk about gratitude a lot. She's grateful. Why are you grateful, Daddy, that you can't play baseball anymore? I don't understand. And I said to her, I said, well, honey, if Daddy never hurt his arm, I never would have met Mommy. And I wouldn't be your daddy. And then I burst into tears. And she was like, Daddy, are you okay? I was like, I'm fine, I'm fine. Whoa, like I was shocked at how emotional I got in that moment. And I had no idea if she got it, but I know that I got it at a whole deeper level. But the issue isn't whether or not we're going to have challenges or difficulties or things that are confusing or painful or not what we plan. I mean, that's going to happen for all of us. The issue is, do we have the courage and the ability to pay attention to our mindset, to appreciate the people around us, the life that we have, and ourselves in the process, and have enough faith and enough courage to trust that it's going to work out. That's what it really takes. Thanks so much for coming and for having me.
Thank you everyone for showing up and coming. I really appreciate everyone for showing up here. Mike said he was going to stick around. If we can just get one more round of applause for Mike. If you have any questions, please feel free to come up.
And if you don't, I won't be offended. Have a good evening.